The Witch Queen brought us some incredible builds over the past couple of seasons with the light subclasses 3.0 changes, but today, like every season, it's time to conclude our build playlist for Season of the Seraph. So in this video, we'll be looking at the top 3 builds from Season 19 that you could potentially use in Season 20 for Lightfall, or Season of Defiance. Now don't worry, I understand that Buildcrafting will change completely with the release of Lightfall on February 28th, so whether you're watching this video before then or after that date, it shouldn't make too much of a difference to the initial design of each build, because I will be optimizing the build shown here for Lightfall. And by that, I mean we'll have these builds pre-made using what we already know that's being changed or removed next season. But as this is a top 3 from Season 19 moving into Season 20, the gameplay will show the build's full potential in its current state. So guys, sit back and relax, be sure to leave a rating, comment what your favourite build was during Witch Queen, subscribe so you don't miss out on future content, and now let's begin our top 3. Now firstly, I will mention that the full playlist of all builds from this season are linked down below, so if you want to go full god mode right now for the remainder of Season 19, then that playlist of crazy builds will have you covered. And keep an eye out here on the channel because the new Season 20 build playlist will be starting very soon too, but I do want to also mention that these builds shown here are recorded from Season 19, and they will be optimized slightly for usage next season. But with the changes to Buildcrafting, I'm going to point out the mods I've used this season, but I recommend you use next season, and give you the starting base setup, sort of like a template where you just need to change a few mods around for the new changes, like Resilience now costing 4 energy instead of 3. So we'll take that in mind as we go through the optimal setups, but starting our top 3 for third place, we have our Hunter Void build featuring Infinite Invis. Now the Hunter Void build has had its ups and downs, but it's actually having one of its cooldown changes reverted, so getting your class ability is going to be even quicker. And also the fact that next season we'll be able to slot in 3 class ability cooldown mods instead of 2 is going to really make this build even better, so it's only going to improve from here. But with this Void build, you're going to be getting infinite invisibility, on-demand volatile rounds depending on the route you go, and you're going to make endgame PvE become easy mode, because with that infinite invis, you can just take as much time as you need to stay out of combat until you're ready to fight again, which is perfect in situations where your team is struggling to survive in things like a Grandmaster Nightfall, or you just want to play safer overall by hiding from the enemy and then popping out to shoot them and then hiding again by going invis. Because with this build you can really just do what you want, as we'll have infinite invis and the build doesn't heavily rely on mods, so the changes in Lightfall will actually make this build even better than it currently is. Now you can use Dry Falcons, which is what I tend to use since we've got volatile rounds when you come out of invis, which helps you with ad clearing. But you can also go with the 6 Coyote, Frosties, Assassin's Cow, or even Graviton Forfeit, and regardless of what mods you use and the fragments you change, it won't make much of a difference with having your invis ready with almost a 100% uptime, as long as you're rocking 100 mobility and ideally strength. People say not to go with a 100 strength because you can just dodge near an enemy to get the invis back, which yeah, that's true, but having a 100 mobility and strength means that if you come out of invis and dodge in panic because you almost died from an ad shooting you across the map, then you're going to get that melee charge back pretty quickly, which is great for when you have to dodge while away from ads. Now if I'm not using Falcons, then I'll use the 6 Coyote for the second dodge. This will 100% guarantee that you always have an invis charge ready as long as you're dodging near enemies, but Falcons should still be fine. 6 Coyote is mostly for when you want to dodge excessively, even when you don't need to. So for the optimized setup heading into Lightfall, and by the way dim links are down below for all 3 builds for this season, but our optimized setup that we want to use is the single shot tether for the 30% debuff, a Gambler's Dodge, Vortex Grenade. The grenade doesn't really matter, then aspects are going to be Trapper's Ambush and Vanishing Step. Fragments we have are Echo of Leeching, Echo of Dilation, and Echo of Persistence. I'm only using these fragments for the extra stats, but then for the mods heading into Lightfall, we're going to want to try and fit in a Powerful Friends for the extra stats if you need to, along with a Radiant Light or one or the other. Then we're going to want 3 utility kickstart mods when we're able to do so. If you have Artifice Armor, you will be able to slot in extra stat mods and have an additional 15 stats in total across all 5 armor pieces. So you might want to farm for some in Mastered Dungeons when you get a chance, but for these stat mods and armor focusing, we know that Resilience is now going to cost 4 energy, so I'd focus on getting armor with Resilience as a priority, and then instead slot in things like mobility mods, which will be a lot cheaper, and then that way it'll be more cost effective. With Elemental Wells changing, I wouldn't really bother messing around with them, but for the time being, I would look at putting on a Wealth Tenacity and finding a new way to spawn the wells, which would be by spawning in Void Breaches or Orbs. It's most likely going to be Void Breaches with the new fragments, but since we aren't making good use with the fragments anyway, other than having the extra stats, we can then change them to create the Void breaches later on when that time comes. A really good build to have ready for Lightfall if you're running a Hunter, but if you're not running a Hunter, you might be running a Titan, because in second place we have our Titan's Voidability build. So in second place we have our Titan ability build. Now you can use this build on all 4 subclasses, and heck, probably even Strand, without needing to make any changes at all, because the build is just completely broken when we're using the Heart of Inmost Light, as that does all the work for us. So with this build we'll be using Void as our main build here. You'll be able to spam all 3 abilities on a loop with hardly any waiting around for the abilities to recharge. Of course, it's not instant, you do still have to wait, but nowhere near as long as you would when not using the build the way we have it set up. Now if you want to spam abilities, then this build works perfectly for all activities up to master content. You can take this into GMs and I would recommend it, but don't go running in acting like a god, because GM ads will just melt you down so quick and you'll just die before you can even shoulder charge into one. But the one thing carrying this build are the barricades, as that gives us overshields. In most endgame activities this is probably going to save you more, and not just you, your allies as well, in a lot of situations. Now next season we have suppressive overloads and volatile barrier rounds, which means your shoulder charge will be able to stun overloads, and your volatile rounds from those void explosions as part of the subclass setup will be able to stun barriers, without the need of any anti-champion weapons or artifact perks. And the fact that we don't even need any champion mods slotted in will mean that we can use more mods that will make this build even better than it already is. So for this build I recommend running the Void subclass with a Ward of Dawn super, a Rally Barricade, Shield Bash melee and a Vortex Grenade. Then aspects you want are Controlled Demolition and Bastion. For the fragments you want Echo of Instability, this will give us volatile rounds to stun barrier champions in Lightfall, Echo of Starvation for Devour and Echo of Expulsion. You're also going to want a Siphon mod for the weapon type that you're using, so that you can make an orb to actually get Devour in the first place. Other than that, the exotic we're going to be using is going to be the Heart of Inmost Light, which will improve each ability when using an ability. And since we're an ability build, we want all 3 abilities back as quick as possible, so max out Strength to 100, Discipline to 100 as well as Resilience, and when focusing armor, use a Resilience Ghost mod and try go for Resilience when getting high stat armor, as this will cost more points to slot in stat mods, which is what you don't want to be doing. And then you can use mods like Radiant Light to boost up your other stats, as well as other stat mods. Now the only other mod I'd consider relying on for this build are Utility Kickstart, slot these on if you can, and a Grenade Kickstart. Anything that is going to give you a quicker cooldown on your abilities is what you want to be slotting in ideally. Now in first place we have our Warlock's Fusion build, and this thing just wrecks. With this build you'll be running around like a god, getting your super back really quick. You'll have pretty much infinite fusion grenades, which are just broken as well, and you'll have healing on top of that, so the endgame PvE doesn't become a struggle. Now there's a few ways you can use this build. You can go the Empower and Rift route, or you can go healing. I tend to go healing because it's more survivability, and you're not really losing out much when it comes to throwing fusion grenades. Since we're running Starfire, we'll get an extra fusion grenade, and those fusion grenade kills are going to give us our Rift back, and dealing damage while empowered will give us the grenade energy. So you'd think it'd be better running Empower and Rifts, but actually since we're getting our well back really quick, and we're only really using these grenades on bosses and champs for extra DPS, it doesn't really matter, so we can just run a healing Rift. Of course, make sure that you're actually running a fusion grenade, because that's what the build is focused around. But for the aspects, we're going to want Touch of Flame, and the second aspect, you can run Icarus Dash like me, but you can also run Heat Rises, it doesn't really matter for this build. For the fragments, in Lightfall, we'll actually be getting a new fragment called Ember of Resolve, where Solar Grenade Final Blows cure you. This could be completely insane, but for our current setup, we have Ember of Blistering, Ember of Char, Ember of Ashes, and Ember of Eruption. But I would be looking at using Ember of Resolve when Lightfall does drop. For mods, I'd look at running 2 Ashes to Assets, or even 3 if it lets you, since it's changing in Lightfall, and that way you'll get your super back really fast. But other mods worth using for Season 20 are Impact Induction and Bomber. Anything that is going to give you your fusion grenade back quicker is a bonus. And then for stats, get Discipline to 100. Now you might wonder, why focus everything around getting the grenade back quicker when Starfire is doing that for us? Well, the basic answer is that it helps us when we don't have an Empowering Rift. So this season I'm using Healing Rifts and 3 Firepower mods, and it just works fantastically. I can throw around 4 fusion grenades one after another without needing to be in an Empowering Rift or Well of Radiance, and it's just perfect. So next season, any mod that will help you get your grenade back quicker like Firepower is what you're really going to be wanting on. This is by by far one of the best builds in the game, and it's definitely worth having ready for next season. So I'd use this setup as your starting setup by having the subclass and fragments already, and then adjust the mods to suit the build from there when Lightfall starts. Now if these aren't the builds you're looking for, then stay tuned here on the channel because I do cover new and updated builds every week and every season, and you guys might just find your new best build. But for now guys, that is your top 3 builds this season and the top 3 builds you should get ready for season 20. As always, if you do like these videos and you want to see more like this, then don't forget to stay tuned here on the channel, and while you're here, perhaps check out the playlist link down below as well, so you can give your characters more builds to choose from. It's been an amazing year with the Witch Queen, and I can't wait to get started with some new amazing builds with Strand for Lightfall. So stay tuned, stay safe, and I'll see you guys very soon, because things are about to get wild. Peace out guys.